Hey everybody, welcome back. New week, new streak. You keep a smile on your face. We died in a hubris-driven fashion last time. It's very embarrassing. Here's your seed, by the way. BBTT, 1ZMA. Bubble tea, thanks. 1Zima for me, please. You guys experiencing the bubble slash boba tea explosion? Please don't waste your time telling me. It's not boba tea, it's bubble tea. It's not bubble tea, it's boba tea. It's both. It's okay. We call it bubble tea here. I understand it has boba in it. Is bubble a is it a corruption of boba, or do they call it bubble tea because it has, you know, bubbles in it, because it makes bubbles when you consume it? I got no freaking idea. I don't even know if it has tea in it, for that matter. I certainly don't think it has like tea leaves in it. It's like, you know, as soon as we go out for bubble tea, I don't really like it that much, but I'm just like, I just get like a watermelon juice, and they're like, sure, there's no tea in that. Yet it's at the place called, you know, oh, the Bubble Tea Emporium. Anyway, I'm not that into bubble tea, and by not that into, I mean I don't have a sweet tooth. Is basically what it comes down to. For salty foods, I have an endless appetite that I have to be very careful about. Will this work? I was gonna say it should work, but what are we gonna do with the golden key? It's a very good point. Absolutely nothing. Which is why, you know, when I go to the grocery store, I don't buy salty snacks, because if I bought salty snacks, I would eat salty snacks. Then I would get in the habit of buying salty snacks every time I went to the grocery store. And, you know, if somebody was like, hey, you know, maybe lay off the Cheetos, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Perfect. I'm sorry, Mr. I do everything perfectly and I don't have any things that I enjoy and I'm trying to suck all the joy out of life. I would turn into that kind of person. I don't want to be that kind of person, so I just, you know, prevent myself from buying at the grocery store in the first place. But Kate is really into bubble tea. I gotta be honest, it makes the being a good husband chore really easy. Because some days I'll just be walking around, you know. Tuesdays before I stream, I like to get out of the house, take a little walk around if possible. And I go, you know what? I could get some husband points today. I'll just pick up a bubble tea on the way home. And it's the easiest task on planet Earth. All you do is say, oh, one bubble tea, please. Yeah, give me a strawberry kiwi slush, 70% sugar, 55% ice with tapioca pearls, please. And turns out it's not. It's actually like, to order it, you gotta have a PhD in the first place. I would rather, let's try it this way, okay? Okay, that did not create any, didn't create any rocks that I was hoping would bust up that dude and give me some. Well, you know what? We can't even get the tinted rocks. So let's just head down to the next floor. Problem solved. And you know, when I say I don't have a sweet tooth, I mean that quite literally. This is not a bit. You know, if you had like an open bag of Doritos or something, and you were like, hey, do you want one? I'd probably be like, nah. But then like 10 minutes later, my willpower would break down. And I'd be like, hey, is that offer for the Doritos still on the table? You could put me in a room with like, you know, an entire chocolate cake. You could be like, oh, it's the most delicious cake you've ever had in your entire life. I'd be like, yeah, I believe you. They'd be like, you want a slice? I'd be like, nah, I'm good. Then they do the thing where they like leave. And be like, okay, I'm gonna leave, but don't eat my cake. As long as I was not hungry, like as long as I was fed a sensible meal, I would not be tempted to eat the cake. I derive very little pleasure from the consumption of cakes, cookies, etc., etc. You know, if you're eating them mindlessly, so be it, but it's not something I actively, like, strive for. Salty snacks, though. I mean, the impulse control gets real low. And you might be saying, and here's the thing, I don't have a perfect diet. I eat French fries on occasion. I consume a lot of nuts, and I know nuts are actually they're good for you. They're rich in, and they're high in fat, but it tends to be, you know, monounsaturated fats that are actually good for you. But I eat more nuts than I probably would eat if I was monitoring my diet 100%. It's my big splurging right now is nuts. Hold on. Yeah, let's do that. Actually didn't turn out very well. And we're in a slightly dicey situation. But if we can just buy a spirit heart, we should be okay. You might be like, no, what's wrong with eating a single slice of cake? Nothing. Nothing at all. But I gotta tell you, for those of you who do not have sweet tooths, you're gonna resonate with me on this one. Those of you who do have sweet tooths, I'm onto your grift, okay? Those of us who, you know, maybe you don't like cakes, you don't like cookies, you don't like pie, maybe you don't even like ice cream, although that's a little closer to the insane part of the spectrum here, because, I mean, ice cream's delicious, but, we're always getting offered cakes, particularly at birthdays, weddings, etc., etc. And then anytime you decline the offer of food, at least, you know, culturally I'm sure it depends, but anytime you decline the offer of food, you have to come up with like a fake good reason. Otherwise, people think like you're living some kind of weird Spartan lifestyle, where you're like, you know, oh, do you want a slice of birthday cake? Nah, I don't want, I'm alright, thank you for asking though. Oh, do you not eat cake? You know, a slice of cake won't kill you. I mean, look at everybody else in the room's having cake. I don't understand why you won't just have some cake. Like, you think you're too good for the cake? Oh, do you think the cake's not good? I mean, the cake's good. It's a chocolate fudge cake. I don't see what your problem is. Like, oh, do you not like chocolate and fudge? You think you're better than us? I think that's what it comes down to, is it gets to like, oh, you think you're better than us, huh? Gets to that moment. It's not really like that. It's just, if you gave me the choice between eating, like, you know, 300 calorie slice of cake and 300 calories worth of nacho cheese or Cool Ranch Doritos, I know which one I'm picking, okay? I would rather save the cake calories and put them in the Dorito bank for later. That's really what it comes down to for me. No offense meant. I have to say. I'm happy I don't have a sweet tooth. But simultaneously, not having a sweet tooth, it always makes you gotta have an argument like this. Because, you know, especially, I think in the US a little bit more than in Canada, but, you know, culturally we're very, very similar. There's like a dessert culture. Like, what's the first thing people do when they go on a diet? Maybe the first thing they would do is cut out soda. The second thing they would do, I'm not eating dessert. I feel like millennials might be sort of killing dessert, and I gotta be honest, I'm here for it. Like, here's a good question for you. Do you have dessert with every meal? Do you have dessert multiple times per week is maybe a better way to describe that. And then a follow-up question, how often do you order dessert when you're out at a restaurant? I order dessert when I'm out at a restaurant in one very specific situation, when my wife has already ordered a dessert. And I go, yeah, sure, I'll have something, I guess. I don't want to just sit here with an empty plate. You know, it's eating commiseration. But when I grew up, I lived in a house with my parents and my grandparents. My parents both worked until roughly dinner time, so my grandma made dinner. In contrast to, and I'm sorry if you're listening, but in contrast to the classic depiction of like a grandmother, my grandmother was not a good cook. Her typical meal was like, you know, ham, which is fine. I mean, I don't dislike ham. So basically, it's baked to reheat it because it's already cooked, I think. And then she would open like a can of little round white potatoes and bake those as well. So the potatoes were always weirdly like gummy and like a little mushy. They weren't necessarily bad, but I mean, it's like we were not. You know, in a bad economic state, for one. And then secondarily, who's still, you know, willfully, when they have a choice, eating canned potatoes in the 21st century? You know, I mean, she was born in the 30s. I'm not really trying to hold it against her. Because she's my grandma, you sicko. But, you know, I think you understand where I'm getting at here. And then, like, the vegetable was always, like, 3 ears of baby corn. It was like the vegetable took up, like, 1/8 of the plate. Served alongside of this incredibly macronutrient-deficient meal. Basically, just sodium content. Probably, like, your week's requirement of sodium in a single meal. Was, like, 4 slices of white bread per person, served with margarine. I told you, it's a dire picture. And then there would always be dessert. And, you know, dessert, she was actually a good baker. Well, I mean, I say was. She might still be. You know, so she would bake cookies and cakes and, you know, apple crumble and pie and stuff like that. You had to, like, fight to not eat dessert. And when I was talking about it with my parents, both of my parents are very health conscious now as well. They're modern adults, you know, they care about what they put into their body. They haven't given up on themselves as they've gotten older. It's inspiring, you know? But I talk about it with my parents and I'm like, oh my God, can you believe that with every meal? And we ate at home 7 nights a week. So with every meal, we were having like 2 or 3 slices of white bread. How convenient. 2 or 3 slices of white bread each, and then also dessert with every day. We were having like 1,700 calorie dinners. And the most frustrating part, looking back, I mean, there's a couple of frustrating parts. To be honest, one of the frustrating parts looking back is that, you know, I was not a super chubby kid, but until I took control of my own health in high school, I was a chubster, you know? To some extent, at least. And I didn't, you know, you're 10 years old. What are you supposed to do? Be like, you know, you don't know the difference. Your grandma's like, hey, do you want some more bread? Your body's like, bread tastes good, give me some more bread, you know? I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but, you know, I was put behind the 8 ball from an early age, in that department at least, although it could definitely be worse. They were also the kinds of people who were like, hey, you can't drink soda, soda's bad for you. Just have like 7 orange juices instead. There's vitamins in it. Anyway, I'm saying, you know, it's been an uphill battle. But apart from that, looking back, I'm like, it's not just that the meals were like, you know, over 1,000 calories each. That doesn't really bother me as much as the fact that so many of the calories just didn't taste good to begin with. Like, if you're gonna give me a 1,200 calorie meal, oh, load it up with butter. Load it up with cheese, you know? I mean, double the amount of meat in the meal or something like that, although that would be very expensive, admittedly. Don't just give me 4 pieces of Wonder Bread and then like a slice of apple pie. I'm just, you know, I'm getting chubby for no reason here, Grandma. But that was me when I was younger, you know. We ate dessert with almost every meal. I'm lucky that even as a child, I didn't really like sweet stuff. So I was able to refuse dessert a lot, but if I hadn't, they would have made a TLC show about me, maybe. But, you know, as I've gotten older, it's kind of informed the fact that, like, I have dessert never. I never willingly have dessert. Well, it doesn't sound right. I am never, I think, you know, guys out there, you know, different people are into different things. Like, my dad has a sweet tooth. I don't want to suggest that, like, you know, ordering dessert is a thing that women do when men don't do it. But I do think that there's a certain element of that. At least in our relationship dynamics. Like, if Kate orders a dessert, then I'll consider it. But and I'm interested to see how other people fall on the spectrum here. But, like, I order dessert at a restaurant almost never. And I make dessert at home literally 0% of the time. Sometimes Kate will have like some Korean snacks in the freezer or something, you know, like some ice cream or, you know, popsicles or something like that, or, you know, like this, like dorayaki, something along those lines. And she'll have some dessert after dinner, but I typically don't indulge. I think my generation, we're a little bit less dessert focused, you know? I don't know if that's true. I'm throwing it out there. I have a hunch. My hypothesis is that millennials eat less dessert than than the generations that came before them. I mean, I can already hear the comments that are like, well, it's because we're not in economically as good of a place as our parents. Though I don't know. I mean, I think that is a factor, but honestly, college has ruined you guys. Instead of just agreeing with me mindlessly, you're like, well, here's all the complications that could happen as a result of the experiment. Yeah, I don't want to hear, it's an Isaac video, okay? I'm not submitting my thesis, I'm just trying to make people laugh or fall asleep mindlessly, but now, I will say, I think my generation, we order way more appetizers. It's just a theory. And I can only speak for, you know, my parents for the most part. Hello, Ruka. You want to come into the room and, you know, do this whole song and dance again? What do you think? My parents so rarely order an appetizer. They might order an appetizer if they were famished beyond belief. But apart from that, they're like, well, why would we order an appetizer? We're just going to make our main course take longer to get here. Well, that's needlessly reductive, Mom. And I think not always correct either. But anyway, I'm all about the appetizer. Feel like, you know, my generation, we're kind of like the generation of like, does anyone want to go in on nachos? If I got nachos, would anyone go in on them? Someone want to go halvesies on like an order of jalapeno poppers? If I got jalapeno poppers, would anyone be interested in going in on those? Then you got to do the delicate negotiation dance, you know? Well, I'd have a couple bites, but I don't know if I want to split them. Maybe we could get a third person, and you're like, okay, I'm on the phone with Tony. Tony, we got a 3-team nacho trade going on here, okay? Now, I gotta warn you, there's a little kicker on this deal. If we get 3 people for $2.50, we could add chicken on the nachos. Is anybody interested in adding chicken on the nachos? You gotta get an overall consensus. You know, you get the idea. Dude, thank God for Mom's knife, but also, Ruka, I'm a little scared about this run, buddy. We got high power, low defense, as is typical. That's just my 2 cents, though. Ah! Okay, this is a terrible start. At least we're getting a Spirit Heart back from this room. I'm not a dessert person. I mean, I feel like our generation is not a dessert generation, but I could be wrong. It's weird, you know? Like, I know not everybody that's a millennial, quote-unquote, at least, is healthy, but I feel like we're so much healthier than my parents' generation. I might be wrong about it. I mean, it depends, you know? Let me rephrase that, because I'm going to go in a slightly controversial direction. But I think our generation is the first generation where people are in good shape despite having the money to buy delicious food, if that makes sense. Like, when you look back at a photo, you know, from like the 1930s or something like that, and you see that people are in good shape, you're not like those people are in good shape accidentally. Our generation it's not the first generation, but I think we've hit a critical mass of people that are like getting in shape on purpose. You know? Like in the 30s and the 40s, you see pictures of people, they're all in relatively good shape, and you're like, yeah, I get it, okay. You know, that was before they had invented the corn chip, but also there's a lot more physical labor back then, a lot more eating at home, you know, potentially economically in a worse position, less disposable income, so they could, you know, spend enough money on food to, like, you know, risk being overweight. I understand it works kind of like the opposite way now, where like cheap food is oftentimes bad for you. But our generation now, you know, you can see like a millionaire who's in good shape. And I feel like people are always like, well, of course he's in good shape. He's a millionaire. He's got the time to worry about that stuff. But I feel like a few generations ago, you would look at that guy and be like, oh my God, you're a millionaire and you're not like obese? How do you must have an incredible level of self-control. I just like, let me put it this way. Our generation, I think, is by far the most informed about nutrition. Both of my parents, I mean, they were in like pretty decent shape when I was a kid as well. They're in better shape now than probably they've been in my entire life, despite being as old as they've ever been as well. But, you know, when I grew up, they were like, all fat is bad for you. Water, sure, water's good for you, but like it's not as good as milk, because milk is just water plus vitamins and minerals. Plus, fruit juice from concentrate. I mean, it's basically like a health beverage, right? And it's not their fault as well. They grew up in a different era. Number one thing my parents were concerned about, you know, health-wise, was like cholesterol. Oh, eggs, bad for your cholesterol. I feel like I haven't heard anybody say the term cholesterol except for me in like, you know, a decade. Now, what does it say that Despite the fact that our generation's a little bit more informed, I say our generation, you know, I'm making an assumption there, but informed about nutrition, and yet still, you know, not necessarily everybody's in great shape. I think it says a couple of things. One is that food is delicious. That's a big one. I didn't have anywhere to go after the punchline, honestly. I wasn't trying to make like a big social, you know, thing about it. I was gonna loop it back around at some point to, you know, Vince from Slap Chop. We're gonna make America's Skinny again, one slap at a time. Real cheese that I lost my boner, by the way. This, I think we're gonna, oh my god, this has been like the fastest run of all time, too. I didn't realize we're at 18 minutes. And in the 18th minute, we found out it wasn't his. We've had some insanely quick runs. Unfortunately, we've realized there's a correlation between speed of run and success, but it's not a causal relationship, you know? We have a lot of damage, but our HP is still of the utmost importance. I think you could spin that out to a real bit. You know that, you know, people in the last 50 years are the first people that got fit on purpose. It's freaking me out. Like, I was watching a documentary. And the documentary is called My Brother's Keeper. It's a really interesting documentary. I do need to warn you in advance. You know, there's some sensitive imagery in it. It's about, in a broad sense, it's about farmers. So, you know, I mean, there are livestock killed in the movie. It's on Netflix. It's a great documentary. I would highly recommend it, but note that there's some disturbing imagery in that regard. Either way, there's a dude in there. He's probably 60, 65 years old, and he's ripped. He's like, he looks like Bill Goldberg. I was looking at his forearms, and they're like rippling oak logs with you know, they're veiny. And I was like, what the heck? Dude, what are your forearm exercises? And then a light went off in my head like a millisecond later, and I was like, oh, he doesn't work out. He's a farmer. He doesn't have to simulate doing physical labor. He just does the physical labor. I was thinking like, oh man, I don't know, he's doing like wrist curls or something like that. No, he's not doing wrist curls. He's hooking up, you know, his tractor via a winch to pull over a tree stump that's on his yard or something like that. You know, he's not doing the simulation. He's doing the real one-to-one thing. I don't think you need to ask for his routine. Hey, what's your diet? I eat until I'm not hungry, and then I do 12 hours of physical labor. Then I eat until I'm not hungry. Yo, but dude, imagine how jacked he could be if he got on creatine. The wafer actually might save this run. I don't know if we needed to be saved, but if we do, it might save it. Thank God for Polyphemus as well. Anyway. It's a non-nuanced bit right now, but you could spin it out. Ruka, don't get in front of the screen. I'm begging you. This is a pivotal moment to make sure we either get a positive streak or a negative streak right now. And thankfully, my son, we got a positive streak. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Another short one. I can't promise the next one will be long. It'll depend on, you know, how she goes. But for now, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, click the like button. Up to the great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching. I will see you next time. See ya.